Courtney Lazar, welcome to the Workplay Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited that you're on because, first of all, you're one of my favorite people ever. Also, you're an incredible business owner who owns an incredible business that I have always shouted from the rooftops. Like, you guys know that I am so into systems, and
Yes.
Courtney is the woman behind workplay branding systems. Like, if you have been going through a process and you're like, this is so systemized, it is Courtney. If you are like looking at workplay branding and you're like, how are they doing this for $4.97 a month? It is all because of systems, and it is all because of Courtney and her systems on the back end. Like, I am not even kidding. I met Courtney when I was having mental breakdowns. I was trying to scale workplay
Yes.
branding.
You had the busiest calendar I'd ever seen. I'm like, how is this person surviving day to day? Because you were like, you had so much stuff going on, so busy.
I was treading water. This was like
Yes.
2021.
21. Yeah. It
Yeah,
was 2021.
3 years ago, I was treading
How was
water.
that 3 years ago? That feels like literally last year, but yeah,
I don't know.
2021.
I feel like 2020 ruined us in our sense of
Yeah.
time. But
Yeah.
I mean, we just had incredible growth in 2020 going into 2021. And
Yep.
I was like, what is going on here? Like, Courtney, I didn't even like fully know like the scope of what you did at the time, but you were like, let me take you under my wing. I am going to help you.
Yes.
And we proceeded to like have 3x the growth after working with you and all of your amazing team and implementing the systems that you do. So I was like, we got to have you on the podcast to talk about systems because there's such a correlation between business revenue growth. And then when you are creating visuals in your business for revenue and business growth, you're going to need systems in order to support everything else that you're doing with those visuals. So this was like
Yeah.
such an important episode for us to have. So, Courtney, I would love for you to introduce what you do, how long you've been doing it, and like just what makes what you do so special.
Yeah, thank you. So like Lyric said, I mean, I don't know how to get a better introduction than that. I have to like write all that down. It's like affirmations on my mirror every day and read what Lyric just said to hype myself up in the morning. So like Lyric said, my name is Courtney. I am the founder of Systems Up. So we are a ClickUp and Slack solutions agency. And I actually got started in 2017 as an online business manager, an OBM. It's probably a term you guys have heard tossed around in this space. My background is in project management and corporate. And so that was obviously just something that, it was a natural progression. If I wanted to, do the whole work remote, travel the world, how do I make money, monetize online? I got started actually in web design. And then I realized I hate web design. I am not a creative, as my background and like my work obviously shows. I'm more analytical. And so I could like see a design and like duplicate what they're like, oh, hey, I like the design of this, but like coming up with it was not my skill set. I just thought it was the only way I could earn a decent living online. So I got started as an OBM. And the very first step as an OBM that I always do with my clients was auditing and evaluating their systems and cleaning things up in the back end because I wouldn't be doing my due diligence to them if I wasn't doing that. And as I continued like through with my business, I started to realize like how much like that was my favorite piece of what I did. It was really optimizing the tech, really looking at their workflows, evaluating their processes. And my husband always makes fun of me. He compares me to Monica from Friends. He thinks like, oh, you're just like Monica, which like I can see the parallels, but we're not going to say I'm quite as well, it's a nice word, as obsessive about it as Monica is. But so when we started doing that, had made the pivot with my business and solely focused on solutions, specifically with ClickUp. ClickUp rolled out. We started utilizing ClickUp, I think, back in 2018, 2019, like before it was like pretty new project management software. For anybody that's listening, by the way, ClickUp it's considered project management, but I think they actually just coined themselves as workspace management now because it's not just project management. The tool is so customizable that it exceeds project management within your workspace. So we focus solely on ClickUp solutions, where we come in and we audit your business, your processes, your workflows, and we clean things up. We build out the tech to support it and build out your workflows into something like ClickUp so that ClickUp functions as like the working hub of your business. And the best way to explain it in like real world terms is like HGTV house flipping. So you've got like this really rundown whole, well, old house or like a business that's got like maybe not the best processes. We come in, we flip it, we clean it up. You've got this beautiful house or this like really efficient, well organized, systemized business. And so that is what I do now. And I love it. You mean we get to do something fun and cool every single day. We have worked with a lot of really, really cool businesses, obviously Lyric being one. We got to work with Broadway costume designer before. I mean, and that just goes to show systems applies to every business. Every single business out there needs to have systems in place in order to max out their revenue, to be able to scale and hire team members. Because if not, you're going to hit these income ceilings, these plateaus within your business, and your systems are going to break and or not support the influx of clients that you have coming in the door. And so, kind of to wrap that piece up, systems is really just it's not the fun, sexy thing to talk about. Like nobody wants to like talk about systems or under like that's where not really where you typically see them wanting to like invest their money because it's not something fun, like some type of marketing campaign or a new website or new branding or visual marketing like you guys do. Systems is the back end. It's kind of hiding, but it is what allows you to be able to actually continue to grow your business and execute the things that is the fun stuff, right? Like a new website or launching a new digital product or whatever it is. You have to have the systems to support that. So
I totally agree. And I feel like I love systems like the way that you love systems
yes,
because you once you understand what a system actually does for you, your like whole world opens up. I think so many people talk about like strategy for how to think about your business and how to like run your team or like stuff like that. And then like
yeah,
I think people fail to understand that all of these things that people are coaching you on need systems to run in the background
yeah,
in order to actually execute. I think like the best entrepreneurs that at least I've seen come through the workplay method are people who have the most dialed in systems on the back end because it allows them to actually like utilize their investments. It's like, what are you
yeah,
investing in right now? Are you investing in the workplay method? Do you have a system in place on your back end to utilize your visual campaigns? And
yeah,
like that's what I definitely want to talk about today. But for those of and for anyone listening that is so new to systems, this is the first time that they're hearing the word system. What exactly in like third grader language is a system in someone's business? Because like I feel like we need to start at the foundation
right.
for anyone who's new or just doesn't understand systems to really grasp this concept.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. Because I think a lot of the time when people think about systems, they solely think about tech. And like that is, I would say, a common misconception that when we say systems, we're just talking about your tech stack or like what softwares or platforms that you're utilizing in your business. But we're actually looking at different things. We're looking at processes in your business and we look at things like automations in your business. And when we talk about automations, we're not just talking about the tech automation, right? We're not just talking about, hey, I have a Zap set up that every time I get a sale, I get a notification inside of Slack or whatever that may look like. You're actually looking at things that are repetitive inside of your business. What are things that you need to automate that are templatized or not templatized, right? Or canned email responses, even things like that. Where are those processes or those workflows that we're building to make rinse and repeat processes of typical mundane manual tasks inside of your business that is going to save time and increase productivity inside of your business. And so when we think about systems, we want to think about it more holistically. We systemize ourselves in some ways, right? So as an example, some people have a morning routine, right? That's an example of a system that they've built for themselves to systemize, right, their day to day or their morning. We think about systems, like I said, with it. Yes, tech is a part of that. So I don't want to like just X that out. Like systems isn't tech; it 100% is tech, right? We're looking at our tech stack. So that is kind of how I would more holistically define systems. It's your automations, it's your processes, it's your workflows, it's your tech stack, and how those are all integrated and built and being utilized together. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. And it's almost like like, what do you do every day? Like, what is repetitive? Like, are you optimizing? Because that's a system, like you said. So are you
Yeah,
optimizing that? And for any of my like workplay members listening, like every single quarter, you create visuals. That is a system that you've
yeah,
invested in your business. And then how are you, what's your system for utilizing that? Like every single quarter, what are you going to do to optimize that? It's like there's
yeah.
all of these little pieces of your business.
Yeah, we actually just did a workshop last week on workflow specifically because I think a lot of the times when people are building out a workflow, right? Let's just use client onboarding as an example because that's pretty applicable across the board. A lot of the times when somebody's like, okay, yeah, I have a system or a workflow for my client onboarding, they're thinking very basic in terms of I have a lead intake, like form filled out, we have a discovery call, I send the contract and invoice, they onboard, right? Like that's a pretty basic standard workflow or system. However, one of our biggest jobs is also coming in and saying, okay, like this is great as a baseline, but how do we 10x this so that things don't break? A team member can this can be delegated to team member and or team members. So it's going through our workflow or system and identifying like, okay, what team members are responsible? What's our end to end? Oh gosh, what's the word I'm trying to look for here? Boundary, right? Like, what's our boundary line? And so when we're looking at like client onboarding as an example, we're let's say, the first step is that they're filling out that client intake form or application on your website. So we actually want to look at this like kind of like a visual map. Okay, like are they how did the client even find us? Did they reach out to us via email or did they fill out the application on our website? Like that's a step in our workflow. If they reached out to us via email, what's the process after that? Like do we just email back and forth until they decide like, hey, I'd like to have a call with you? Or is there a system in how like we actually handle clients that come to us via email? Because as an example, everybody, and for the rest of our system and the workflow to work and be executed, everybody has to funnel in through the same avenue, right? And so, but not everybody's going to come to you from the same way. Like, not everybody's just going to find your website as much as you'd like it and they'd have an application to fill out on your website. Somebody's going to find you on Instagram and they're going to DM you and be like, hey, I'm interested in your services. What are your prices? Or they're going to send you an email and say, hey, so and so told me about you and I just found your website. I'd like to learn more, right? These are all leads that we still need to nurture and or get through our pipeline, but they need to all still funnel into the same direction. And so let's say you have somebody managing your Instagram DMs, would they know what to do with that lead, right? When somebody says, I'm interested, like how do they know to engage? Do they need to send them somewhere specific? If maybe you have a virtual assistant managing your email inbox and they've got somebody coming in and saying, hey, like I want to work with you guys. How do I work with you? But they didn't fill out the application. Like that basic first step is like one that could actually have 10 different avenues. But you actually have to systemize each of those pieces because that's what makes it possible for you to scale because you have to be able to delegate to a team member, right? So, and that's what makes it possible for people to step back, like take a vacation, go out of office. Because you've got these processes in place that your team members don't have to come to you with every single little question and you're not the bottleneck of the solution. And I think that's a huge piece in scaling and where a lot of people kind of get like you bogged down because hey, I've got all these team members and they're great, but like when something comes up, I'm always the person they go to. And I think the big thing with systems is that you have to remove the emotion from like what you are wanting to accomplish and or do yourself. Like I don't know if that's really explaining it the best way, but when systems are there to like help you to remove the emotion and actually look at the logical how, right? Like how do I accomplish this? So to kind of explain what I mean by that is like when we have something in our business that we want to delegate, maybe we aren't delegating it for a specific reason, like right, like maybe it's client communication. That's something I'm like, I have to ask myself, why do I not want to delegate client communication? It's because I'm scared somebody can't communicate with my client in the way that I can to make them feel nurtured, taken care of, whatever that may look like. And so I have to remove the emotion from that, like why, and I have to plug in and replace it with a system of like, okay, here's the logical solution to avoid this problem from happening that gives me peace of mind to be able to say, yes, team member, take this on because I have a system in place to know that you are going to execute it in the way that I have like my expectations set. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so much. And I feel like there's so much to uncover here because
Yeah,
there
there's a
is
lot.
an emotional piece to it. There
Yeah,
is. It's like when you've held on to something for so long, or maybe you don't actually trust your team because you don't have a system in place, or maybe like you've tried to make a system yourself and then they've messed it up. I think it can become like really, really scary to then delegate. And then
yeah,
what does that lead to? Just more burnout and, just all the
yeah.
things, right? And so that's why I just think systemizing almost everything in your business is so helpful. Is there anything
Yeah.
that we shouldn't be systemizing?
Uh, I guess human interaction, but even that there can be like a some
I was
type
gonna
of like
say,
systemized
but
piece, right? Like, so it's like, I think that's where there's like a line, right? Like you want to make sure that you have systems in your place, but you want to keep that human touch to your business because that's what makes people want to continue working with you. I mean, obviously, like having a good client journey in general is like that's what's going to keep people coming back. But there are pieces in that client journey that like, hey, I can systemize or automate this even if it's a reminder to do something, right? And so what I mean by that is, let's say you have a client that's a retainer client. So you've got them on a consistent basis. And part of your onboarding process is to like figure out what day their birthday is or a client anniversary, like whatever, like some type of celebration, right? We want to make sure that we're like acknowledging that because like we want our clients to know that like hey we're here to support your business but we want this like personal like good cultivated relationship with you. And so maybe it's like you send them a Starbucks gift card on their birthday or their client anniversary, right? So it's actually a part of like in our onboarding process we go ahead and already create a recurring task a week out from that client anniversary to make sure that we've either sent a gift and or have prepped a gift card or a card to go out in the mail, whatever it is, so that we're systemizing a human touch so that we're because I mean anybody would be lying to you if they're going to sit here and say like oh no I'll remember those days, right? I'll remember those days, I'll remember to send it out. No, you will not. You will not because you're running a business. There's a million pieces to running your own business. You're interacting with your clients on a day-to-day basis. You also have your personal life that you're managing. So whether it's like you've got family, kids, dogs, whatever it is, life happens, and there's a million and one things that we're managing as humans, and like systemizing those pieces to make sure that we are actually integrating a human touch is just another example of like where like okay like systems has to play some type of piece and making sure that we still have that human interaction.
yeah, and it's also like optimizing your time. It's like
Yeah,
how
100%.
like how much brain power would it take to remember all of your clients' birthdays, right? And
Yeah,
it's like system can do that for you. It doesn't mean that like you're taking away the human interaction. It just means your system
exactly.
the human interaction, which is a good thing, you know.
Yes.
And I think, for us service providers, I know both of us provide a service. But anyone listening who provides a service, like think about how much of your day is dedicated to providing the service. Like, do you have systems for your marketing? Do you have systems for your, collaborations that you're doing? Do you have systems for your launching of the services? I think so many service-based providers in general get so bogged down with like just facilitating the service that
Yep.
they also like if you don't have systems for your marketing, that's going to fall to the wayside. And I feel like I see that a lot. So then
We
when people,
see that all the time. Yeah,
yeah,
all the time. Like I think the thing that happens is like you said, we're so caught up in serving our clients that our own businesses get put on the back burner. And so like you're saying, if there's not a system in place to execute things like a marketing campaign or whatever that may look like, then our business may go stagnant in the back end. And where that becomes a problem is let's say, you've got five clients and three of them off board and you've got three slots to fill in your business to like hit your revenue goals. If you still don't have like this machine running in the back end where you're still marketing your business, you still have a lead gen system, whatever that looks like, then you're going to be in the hole digging for clients to fill those three spots versus having that machine that says, okay, next one up, right? Like we've got the next person coming in and onboarding because we've got this running in the back end and you haven't just been letting it sit so that when these three people off board, you're like, oh my gosh, like I don't have a client to fill the spot. And so that's where systems plays, comes into play with our own business and why it's so incredibly important to focus on that while we're still focusing on our clients. And then the other thing that to think about is you still want to make sure that you're serving your clients in the best way possible, because when you're nurturing these clients, that's either one, extending the lifetime value of your client because you're retaining them, they're not churning. And that's organic marketing and or referrals, right? Like that's another source of leads and revenue in your business. So having systems built on both ends is incredibly important because it plays into your revenue either way. You're either systemizing a good client journey so they're feeling nurtured and taken care of and they want to refer you or stay on longer, or you're systemizing the back end so that you have those systems running to continue to bring leads into your business if somebody churns or offboards at the end of their project.
I think that's exactly where systems equals revenue, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where it's like when you understand systems, you already know this because you can see how it's happening, and without even you being the middleman, it's like wow, like the money is just coming in because I have a system for that. I
Yeah.
don't have to manage it. Maybe you've already delegated it, but that's where I just feel like the overlap is so strong in
Yeah.
terms of I'm making more money because my systems are better. If
Yeah.
someone is just in the weeds of their business, like what's the first thing they should do systematically
Yeah.
in order to start to create that machine that brings in clients, that retains clients, and ultimately adds to their bottom line?
Right. So that's a good question, is like, where do I start with my systems? Because there's a million different places in your business, obviously, that you can systemize. And the thing to think too is systems is an ongoing process, right? Like there's never going to be an like, okay, I'm done. My systems are there, right? That's the whole other piece is on the back end. We need to continue to optimize our systems based on what we're seeing inside of our business, right? So there's this whole other piece to systems on the back end, where there's a continuation. So when we're focusing on, okay, I want to get started, the very first thing you need to focus on is client fulfillment and lead gen. Like those are the very first two things. I would say client fulfillment is first because that is your revenue. They are your that's what's keeping your business running. And so you want to focus on client fulfillment. So that's, client onboarding. What's your client execution process for your project? And that's obviously going to depend on like your business or your service. Are they a retainer client? Is a one and done project, but we're focused on client onboarding, client project execution, client offboarding, and or upselling, like an upselling system potentially. Like what's our process on the back end to extend the lifetime value of that client? Like where do we roll them once their project is over? And then after that, I would say focusing on a lead gen system, especially right now. I know like right now is kind of like an unstable, volatile time in the industry. And I feel like a lot of people are feeling that right now. And I think that would be something that no matter if the, if things were stable or not, that's incredibly important for a couple of reasons. One being, if you ever, as the CEO of your business, want to be able to successfully step back in your business, let's say like sales is, as a CEO or founder, like still on your docket of responsibilities, you're not going to be able to step back without leads dropping out, right? Because you're not going to be there, like have your butt in a seat, so to speak, to continue that lead gen process. And so that's the other piece I would focus on, is like, what am I doing to get leads in my business? How am I nurturing people? How am I systemizing relationship building and networking and putting my name out there? And what am I doing to automate that process as much as possible, even if it's delegating to a team member? I know we talked about a little bit earlier about removing the emotion from that, because I know that piece can probably feel like a scary thing to delegate in your business, because it's how do I put my business out there to other people and still represent my business well? And so that's where you have to build out those processes. And like, just as an example, a guide, when I talk about communication with clients and or a potential client, one thing that used to, and this was like probably 4 or 5 years ago when I was an OBM, that would just like drive me crazy, is when a team member would message a client and it's this like long paragraph of like an update of everything that's gone on in their business when they're sending over like an update, right? And that's not digestible to read, right? So I said, okay, this is why I don't like to delegate client communication, because I would never just send this like long run on paragraph to a client with an update, right? And so how do I build a system around this so that I'm seeing top notch, like 5-star communication with our clients. And so then I built a client communication guide inside of our business that every team member has access to, so they know how to draft a response to a client. And so it talks in that guide, it talks about, okay, hey, when we draft a message, we have an intro paragraph, we have the bulleted updates, we have deadlines or things of where we require their response highlighted and bolded. We use these types of emojis. We don't use these types of emojis. We use a positive tone to our language instead of a negative tone. So we don't use words like can't do this or please don't do this. Like we use a positive tone in our communication. And then I'm trying to think of what else maybe that we would include in that guide that would be helpful. But that's just a good example of like one thing that we built in order to delegate or systemize client communication to somebody else on the team. Or even like internal communication as a team. One thing that we think about systemizing is like when we have clients or team members constantly coming to us for questions, right? When I talked about that bottlenecking, like they don't maybe necessarily have all of the resources or SOPs, standard operating procedures in place to like move forward on something without your guidance. And so like on our team, we have a question method. And so if a team member comes to us and has a question, they're not just going to ask the question, right? Like that's not productive. It's not efficient. And so we want to empower our team members to be able to like go find the solution, because a lot of the times when somebody asks a question, it's because they're unsure of themselves. They're unsure of the solution and they don't want to look silly or like they messed up, right? And so we want to empower them to find the solution and learn. And so the question method we have on our team is you can ask a question, you state the question, you present 2 to 3 solutions and say, hey, I think solution B is the best option because of this reason. And so that's empowering them to find the solution. It gives them it gives the manager or the CEO, whomever, an easier way to more quickly get them a response, because they're not having to go say, okay, well, here's a couple of solutions. I think this one's best. It's saying, hey, these are great options. I would go with option B. Here's why I prefer going with this. So they have the answer. They can build a process around it moving forward. And that's empowered them a little bit more because they've come up with a solution themselves. So that's a very long-winded answer and kind of tangents out a little bit from the original question. But, I think that's the big thing. And the thing to keep in mind is when you're listening to that, it sounds kind of silly, right? Like you literally build a guide to say like what emojis I do or do not use, or like what tone I do or do not use. That sounds micromanagey to me. That's the whole point, right? We don't want to micromanage our team. I don't want to micromanage. I want to encourage autonomy and empower my team to work asynchronously. In order for them to do that and to do it successfully, they have to have these resources to go and run with whatever they're working on. And so the whole point of this is to avoid micromanagement by integrating a system. Does that make sense?
Every time I talk to you, my mind is always so down, and like I live for this. So this is so important because the level of detail into a system, like I just feel like people don't realize how
Yeah.
detailed it can get. And I think you do such a good job of, I don't know if this is how you were born or like what's going on in your brain, because it's freaking amazing. But the level of like, oh, I can systemize the emojis. I
Yeah.
remember having someone we had hired like way back when, and the emoji thing is real. She kept winking
Yeah.
at people in the client communication. I'm like, we're not winking. We're not
Yeah.
using the emoji. Like this is
Yeah.
we're, and so like when I had met you and you were like, oh no, emoji guide all the way. I was like,
Yeah.
genius. I'm like, so I
Yeah.
banned all these emojis in workplace branding. I was like, absolutely none of these emojis. Actually, all you guys can use are these approved 10
Yeah.
emojis. Okay. But like it is so true. Like the level of detail is so necessary in order for you to like, especially if you have high standards, in order for
Yeah.
you to sleep at night. And I think
Yeah.
anyone trying to get into the next level, like a lot of the people listening to this podcast, like they are trying to get to the next level of their visuals, of their marketing, of their online presence. And it is going to require you to create a very solid system
Yeah.
for areas that you are wanting to up level in. And like
Yeah.
the way down to the emoji guide, right? It's
Yeah.
like these are the details that we want to be looking at. I would love for you to kind of tell us like what are the symptoms of you needing a new system or an up level system? Like what are some of the things that you might be seeing or feeling in your
Yeah.
business that is going to be like ding ding ding, I need to up level my system?
Yeah, so I would say that's, I mean, there's probably a lot actually that I could list for this. So I'll try to like touch on, I'd say like the biggest, most obvious, um, bottlenecking being a really, really big one, right? Like team members constantly having to come to you for questions is going to be big. I'd say like the ball getting dropped on deadlines and timelines. Like let's just say for an example, like you're building out your um, roadmap as an example for Q3 and you've got all these initiatives that you want to roll out or these things you want to roll out for the quarter and you're not able to actually execute on those things like that's another type of thing that we're looking at. I would say an income plateau because that to me is not necessarily an indication of like, hey, we don't have enough leads coming in, and if it is like lead gen system, right? But we're also looking at like I have a capacity or a threshold of revenue that I can actually obtain because I don't have maybe maybe it's enough clients coming in. I don't have the bandwidth to take on more clients. And to me, that's a sign of, okay, I don't have enough team members. I don't have time to onboard team members right now. Team onboarding system, team hiring system, team management system. Like there's three systems you can plug in right there to more quickly and efficiently onboard team members. So to increase your bandwidth to be able to take on more clients, right? And so I'd say like those are probably like the top three or four things that you're going to see. Like I said, revenue plateauing. Um, I don't even remember the first one that I just said. I'm like going back. Like this
No,
is typical mom brain.
I love this. I love this. Honestly,
Yeah.
the two that you had mentioned, like income and execution, I think are
Yeah.
huge indicators of like if you have been in the workplay method and you're like, hey, I'm executing on my like the actual visuals, like workplay is executing the actual visuals for me,
Yeah.
delivering to me, and then you're having an issue on like executing the implementation where you are wanting these visuals, or you're having an issue with like the income after you've created a campaign for these visuals, that is where we might need to look at your marketing systems. We might need to look at
Yeah.
like the systems that you have in place right now, because I think a lot of people come into the workplace process and they think that the picture is going to sell the thing. They think that, okay, as if I can just look good, then
Hmm.
everything else can sort itself on its own. And
Yeah.
looking good and looking polished and having a like a through line with your storytelling, excuse me, and your visual campaign that you're putting out for this new product or service that you're promoting, but then you're kind of hearing crickets, that is an indication that we need to create a marketing system around
Yeah.
these visuals. So I would love to go into that because that I think is a missing piece for so many people who are in the method, but then also who are thinking about the method, who are like, hey, I'm like ready to go for my photo shoot. I've got it planned. I know what I want to do. I've got my 4
Hmm.
marketing projects. How are we going to execute now
Yeah.
with all of these visuals? So I would love for you to like walk us through a few maybe strategies that would require systems in place for you to actually get this done once you
Yeah.
get your visuals back from workplay
Yeah,
branding.
that's a good question. So one thing, like, let's just focus on like general social media because that's probably going to apply to most people listening to this. Is like general marketing, general social media, maybe your Instagram, maybe you have a blog, podcast, whatever that may look like. So one of the very first things that we want to think about, well, before we build out the system, you know, obviously, like I'm going to say, like build this inside of ClickUp because that's what we do, right? That's my recommendation. But you know, you can really build this in whatever platform that you're utilizing. Um, so the very first thing that I would actually focus on is your content pillars and themes, the industries that you're focusing on, like your ICP, who is your ideal client, like what industry are you focusing on, and outlining what those things are. And the reason I say this is because then you're going to go into ClickUp or your tool, whatever you're utilizing. And when you're building the system, you want to build it out so that these things are organized, right? We want to say, as we're developing our marketing, we're organizing it by industry or ICP. We're organizing it by content pillar or theme. We're organizing it by the solution or the problem that like the problem that they're having and the solution that we're providing. Maybe you even want to organize it by the call to action, right? So maybe the call to action or like the goal that you have is to increase revenue or to maybe it's just to educate, right? Like there's different things when we're thinking about marketing as a whole. We have to start with outlining and like listing out what those things are first, because then when we go to build it inside of a system, we want to be able to see it holistically from that point of view and then organize it or filter it down so that when we want to run another campaign, we can say, okay, we know that our goal for this campaign is to increase revenue or sign more clients, whatever that may be. We can go back into our content bank and we can filter through all of our past content to see what types of content we've created in the back end, so to speak, to accomplish this in the past. And so that's why I say when we're looking at our marketing initiatives, it's identifying those things first, and then we're identifying our flow, right? Our flow, like whenever we're going to go and we're going to launch a marketing campaign, or maybe we're just planning our content for the month. What is the flow that we're going to follow in order to successfully execute this? And so one thing I can give as an example, let's say you have an Instagram account and you have a blog and maybe an email newsletter, right? You've got those three forms of marketing inside of your business. You want to create kind of like a trickle down effect or identify like what types of content you want to share where and why. So for us, like maybe as an example is every single week you post a blog post, right? That's going to go out every single Monday. So we're going to determine our cadence. So maybe blog post is Monday, newsletter is Tuesday, Instagram post is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we're determining our cadence. And then we're determining where are we pulling this content? How are we writing this content? How often are we writing this content? So maybe you want to batch your content, which obviously I definitely recommend. I mean, you do it and take into consideration, like, especially with marketing trends in marketing, and those typically happen very, very quickly, especially with if you're incorporating like pop culture into your marketing, like those things happen on the fly and you have to be ready to integrate those things. But as a whole, when you're looking at your marketing campaign, that can be batched out. And so maybe it's like on the first of every month, you are outlining your 4 blog posts for the month, you're drafting them. And then from those 4 blog posts, you're actually creating your content for Instagram based on the topic that you're discussing in that blog post. And so we've drafted our blog content. From the blog content, we've drafted our Instagram posts. And then from there, we want to look at our email newsletter. Like, what do we want to incorporate in there? We're going to talk about maybe the upcoming blog content or blog posts that we've highlighted, maybe any promotional things for our business, upcoming events or workshops you might be having. Like, there is going to be a system to build all of that out. And then, so once we've identified those things, you want to have a spot to manage that workflow. So like just to try to visually explain it as much as possible, because like system is a little sometimes hard to articulate when we're not like sharing our screen and demoing it for you, right? Let's say you've got like a visual board inside of ClickUp or Asana, like or Trello, whatever you're using. When you're looking at your workflow from left to right, you've got, maybe ideas or concepts for your content. And then you've got things that are in progress or being drafted. And maybe like you've got a team member that's actually the one drafting it. So the next thing that needs to happen is you as a manager or CEO, you need to review and approve the content. And so there's that step in the process. And then maybe it's like once you've reviewed and approved it, then it's creating graphics or GIFs or video clips, whatever it is, to actually put that content out there. Then you're scheduling it, and then it's obviously published at that point. And so from there, like that's where you think the buck stops, but it doesn't. It's what do we do with this content now that it's been published? We put it into a content bank to save it, to repurpose it later, because the whole point of systems is to increase efficiency and productivity and minimize the manual touches that you're doing in your business. And so you're not reinventing the wheel every single time. And so how does integrating our system make that applicable for us is we've got the system to execute, to put our visuals right out there. There's that piece to it. There's the content bank, which is helping to repurpose content later down the line. And then the third piece, which I haven't touched on, which I'd say is vastly important, is your data, your metrics. So you've got these visuals, right, that you've got from Workplay. You've executed it into a campaign. It's been published out into the world. You've saved it to repurpose later. Now what? Like maybe you're still hearing crickets. Maybe something is not working. That's where data comes into play. And that's where you have to look at the metrics. And maybe you had like a certain post go viral, or maybe it just performed a lot better than your other pieces of content. You need to systemize metrics tracking in your business as a part of your marketing, because if you're not looking at the data to make decisions in your business, you're doing yourself a disservice, because at that point in time, you might as well throw a blindfold on and throw a dart at a dartboard and hope that you're hitting the bullseye, because that's really where this like last piece of systems is going to make this marketing process like really work and stick well. Is we're looking at our metrics for the month and saying this post performed, this visual performed really well, whatever that looks like. Why did it perform well? Like, okay, what are we seeing as a consistent theme? Like A, B, and C pieces of content performed well. What's the recurring theme? And then using that, actually taking the data and then utilizing it the next month and integrating what your findings, so to speak, from that data. So again, long-winded answer, but lots of stuff that you can look at from that perspective.
I think that's so important for people to hear, especially if they don't have a system like that in place.
Mm-hmm.
That is how much is being left on the table by not
Yeah.
having the system. And I'm so glad that you brought up data, because if you weren't going to bring it up, I had it in my notes. I'm like, we got to talk about
Yeah.
data for a second, because the only reason you're able to track data is because you have it documented by the system. Like if
Yeah.
you're just randomly posting online, or if you're just randomly putting like marketing stuff out there and you have no system that is documenting it throughout the time that you're doing that marketing test, how are you going to look at the data? So like I
Yeah.
think data is sometimes like it kind of goes over people's heads, like what does
Yep.
that even mean? And I would
Mm-hmm.
say like it I have a friend, Stacey Tushel. She's been on the podcast. She's a workplay member. The way that she uses her workplay content that's created is all based on data. So if you
Yep.
don't have a system that is documenting that, there's no way that you can take what she's, there's an episode on the workplay podcast with her if you want to dive into data even more. But there's no way you can take her advice without having the systems in place to be tracking the data. You have to have
Yep.
a data tracking system. And something that I love so much about your systems is like they're so easily able to be tracked, right? Everything's
Yep.
documented, everything has a place, and you're actually able to utilize what you're doing visually in your marketing, which I think is so cool. Whenever someone's like, "What's the ROI of visuals?" It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to know what the ROI is if you don't have systems on the back
Yeah.
end that are showing you what the data is doing. And if something isn't working because you have it documented, you can tweak it and then test and then look at, the data against other data that you did
Yeah.
before. Like it's so incredibly important. Um,
Yeah.
Anyone who's like, okay, this is really overwhelming. Like, I know that I need systems now, but like, I don't have a systems brain. I love everything that you're saying, Courtney, but I don't know what to do. I need someone to do it for me. What are some things that your company actually helps people with? Like, what are some options for us to be able to implement like right away as we're going through the workplay method?
Yeah, awesome. So I'd say there's a couple of different solutions depending on things like budget and or execution bandwidth. So those are the two things that we're going to focus on. So I'll talk about execution bandwidth real quickly. So we have two options you can work with us. Let's say like, hey, I'm pretty tech savvy. I've got some time on my hands. I have the ability to execute on my own. Then you can go into a service that we have. It's a subscription service called Upkeep. And it's basically like having our team in your back pocket that is familiar with your system. So you have a private Slack channel with us. You can ask us any questions that you have about systems. It doesn't even have to be ClickUp. It could be anything technical, like setting up a Zap or an automation, or like, hey, do you think this platform is best, or this one? Like whatever that may look like, we're there to support you and provide like Loom video solutions. And then you go and you execute the solution. On the flip side, if you don't have as much bandwidth to execute, then I would say something like one of our new Kickstarts is a really good option. So we used to have just like these huge onboarding and deployments where we came in and systemize your business like from start to finish, like the entire thing. But we've created these more like micro services where you can say, hey, I have these two workflows specifically, like let's say it's client onboarding and client offboarding. I want you to systemize these two processes inside of my business, build them out into ClickUp, and then that's where we can come in and do a kickstart. And then we've got different tiers, so like up to two workflows, up to four, six, etc. So I'd say those are the two solutions from an execution standpoint. The other thing that we also do is if you want more of like a plug in and play option, we have some new digital products that are rolling out that are solutions, I would say, that you're then able to go in and customize for your business. So they're like plug in and play templates with like guides and videos on how to customize them for yourself. So
I think this is really great for anyone who's inside of the process and you're like, hey, this campaign that I'm doing this quarter is going to be focused on me getting more PR and media um, opportunities, right? So I'm
mm-hmm.
creating visuals for PR and media. And then you're going to implement Courtney's template or Upkeep or Kickstart solution to then go build that process for you to actually execute that goal that you set out for
Yeah,
even creating the visuals that quarter. And so that's where I think that this is going to be so powerful for you guys because you get to basically say like what's the goal here? What do I want to be? I actually had a member come in and create visuals for a training manual. So if you're like, hey, I want to brand my training manual, or any kind of like back end, I think sometimes we think like visuals are all front end. If you want to brand like your back end for your team and like creating culture and things like that, like that is going to require systems. And then like, Courtney,
yeah,
you're like amazing at branding. You've also been through the process and like I've been through
yes,
the process and I'm like, she gets this back end branding.
I do.
So there's like so many ways to utilize this plus
Yeah,
your visuals and I'm so glad that you came on to talk about this. I honestly feel like this is one of like the most jam-packed episodes for if you are wanting to scale your business and you're wanting to scale your marketing or whatever you're wanting to do, like if you're trying to
mm-hmm.
up level, like systems plus visuals is so
Yeah,
important.
absolutely.
Courtney, where can everyone
Yes.
find you? Where can everyone
Uh,
connect?
so you can find us on Instagram. Our handle is We Are Systems Up. The website URL is also the same thing. So if you guys have questions, you want to pick my brain, you have questions about maybe a new service, you can contact us there, or there's an application on our website. And you also have the option on our website to book a call straight from the website. So free consultation calls for anybody that needs some systems brain picking, and then we can come up with a solution. So
I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with you. I'm obsessed with what you do. Thank you so much.
thanks, Lyric. I appreciate it.